Hello everyone, I am Myra Bacsal, the program leader of the Masters of Education in High Ability Studies with the Early Childhood and Special Needs Education Academic Group, National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I have done research work on psychology of artists, artists in training, social and emotional needs of high ability learners, as well as family influences in talent development among the gifted. But I consider myself a book geek, first and foremost. I have a deep, abiding passion for reading. I believe that reading has changed my life and introduced me to lands both imaginary and real. I also believe in its capacity to transform an individual. Hence, I thought of a way of combining several of my passions together and link them with my research project and the courses that I teach in the university with reading for social and emotional learning. So for today's talk, I will be touching on what transformative teaching practice means, the significance and the role of multicultural children's books for multicultural education, an overview of the social and emotional learning framework, and how picture books can be an effective way to scaffold the teaching of SEL competencies in the classroom. And then we come full circle with transforming teacher cultural landscapes. First, let's explore what a transformative teaching practice means. If we examine carefully what the primary goals are of most teacher education programs, as noted by researchers, these would include developing teachers who are sensitive supporters of all types of students, who embrace diversity and welcome it, who make concerted efforts to really plan and implement inclusive and culturally responsive forms of instruction. And to be able to effectively do this, research has indicated that teachers would naturally need guidance from the teacher education faculty. Now, why is this becoming increasingly important? This is primarily because multicultural classrooms are rapidly becoming the norm or the reality rather than the exception. In fact, researchers even noted that the culturally homogeneous classroom is becoming a thing of the past. Hence, there is an increasing need for teacher education programs to prepare teachers for possible issues that may arise with this very vibrant mix of different ethnicities, cultural backgrounds in the classroom, and to critically examine very concrete ways through which cultural responsive pedagogy can be introduced in the classroom in a systematic yet very organic and seamless manner as well. Now, noted multicultural educators such as James Banks, Sonia Nieto, and Patty Bode have been tirelessly advocating the importance of training culturally responsive educators, as it is an important component of what it means to become an effective 21st century educator. We are moving beyond just providing curriculum tools and content knowledge, but towards a more committed, more sustainable, more holistic, integrative approach so that students, regardless of what background they come from, regardless of what linguistic backgrounds they evolve from, are physically and emotionally safe under our tutelage and are able to thrive not just academically, but as human beings as well. And so as teacher educators, the key questions that we should ask ourselves would be, how will change occur? How do we scaffold our teachers' lived awareness such that they become more culturally responsive and inclusive? And this is where the transformative learning theory comes in. According to Wilson, Switzer, Parrish, and the Ideal Research Lab, there are elements that can be found in a transformative learning experience. First is the lasting impression that it leaves on the learner. I'm actually reminded by one of the famous quotes by Maya Angelou when she said that, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So it is this affective experience, I believe, is one that is embedded in that lasting impression. Another element of the transformative learning experience is that it becomes part and parcel of the person's self-narrative. It is not just something that is outside of the self, but there is a deep awareness of how the learning experience function in relation to one's self, one's identity, one's reality. The last element is the behavioral impact, whereby the learner could clearly point to actual changes resulting from these learning experiences. So one of the more concrete strategies being utilized and explored now in teacher training institutes is the power of multicultural children's literature, introduced with a critical multicultural analytic lens in building the capacity of teachers to approach and to deal with very complicated but very real and pressing issues connected with the many forms of diversity that are now evident in today's classrooms. This is because multicultural children's literature tap into what is termed as vacancies in our learning landscape through authentic stories that provide, again, what is called a cognitive disequilibrium, compelling teachers to open themselves to not just one singular way of looking at the world, but a more pluralistic, highly diverse approach of seeing and being. Which brings me to my next point regarding multicultural children's literature. Researchers have also established how the tenets of multicultural education can be fostered and introduced through multicultural picture books. Through these very familiar resources, teachers are able to address and explore issues such as cultural prejudices and stereotyping, preconceived notions about people depending on their race, their ethnicity, their religion, and help examine all this from a social justice perspective by taking careful note of silenced voices, the voices of the marginalized, and the disenfranchised. There are even researchers like Goldstone who claim that the exposure of culturally authentic books to teachers is an absolute necessity, especially in light of the current educational landscape. Why? Because they're able to offer meaningful stories that reveal distinct language patterns and values of people who are coming from very different realities. Hence, multicultural literature serves as a mirror that reflects diverse characters' experiences, allowing the reader to identify with what the characters in the stories are thinking and feeling. Through multiple representations of various realities, the reader does not feel invisible or alone any longer, but they get to understand that they're part of humanity as a whole. Multicultural literature also serves as a window that provides access to worlds that are unfamiliar to us. They're portals to culturally lived contexts that show the reader a much larger world that exists out there, providing spaces for perspective taking and the building of compassion and empathy towards those who have always been regarded as the others. I also ascribe to the inclusive definition provided by Lukens, Smith, and Koffel, who defined multicultural literature broadly as books about children that do not only touch on race or ethnicity, but they also represent characters of diverse religion, different forms of ability, identity, age, social and economic status, body image, language, political beliefs. Or in summary, they serve as mirrors, windows, doors to children's culturally distinct life experiences that may also have universal resonances. And now we get to social and emotional learning and how do they all fit meaningfully together. Research has consistently shown how the development of social and emotional skills is foundational in ensuring our children's success not only in school, but also in life. The Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, defines social and emotional learning as one's ability to acquire and apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills to recognize or identify and regulate emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and demonstrate compassion and empathy, establish and maintain positive relations with others, and make responsible decisions. The Singapore Ministry of Education has adapted the SEL framework with its 4 guiding principles that include explicitly teaching SEL skills in the curriculum to guide one's behaviors, and that these SEL or social and emotional learning competencies should be taught to prepare our students to live and work in a global interconnected environment. Teachers in schools are also expected to model and exemplify these SEL skills, and children who acquire these skills would then be able to demonstrate good character and active participation in the larger community as responsible, ethical, caring citizens. There is also extensive research that establishes how students benefit greatly from receiving SEL instruction. They're found to be more connected to their teachers in school, they're more engaged, they're more involved in their own learning, they find greater intrinsic motivation to learn. They're also less likely to engage in problematic behaviors, they have lower levels of emotional distress, and even have improved academic performance. Now, there are a variety of approaches to teaching SEL. One is through a process of infusion or incorporating it within the existing curriculum, regardless of the content areas being taught. Another is through explicitly teaching these skills of identifying and recognizing one's emotions, regulating one's behaviors, and so forth. Now, a third strategy is by using teachable moments to perceive both positive and negative situations as opportunities. I am arguing and also advocating that as teachers, we should also take advantage of the transformative power of multicultural picture books in introducing these social and emotional learning competencies, not just through values-based textbooks. Of course, they also have their place and their immense importance as well, but through real-life stories that are not didactic, not preachy, not prescriptive, and not heavy-handed in any way. I am talking more about very subtle but beautifully illustrated narratives where word and image blend together seamlessly. Stories that do not necessarily intend to teach a moral lesson, but move the reader into thinking and feeling deeply about themselves and the world that they live in. Researchers have empirically shown how authentically portrayed multicultural picture books are able to validate the lived experiences of children, empower children as they see themselves represented in literature, promote respect and understanding between and within cultures, allow readers to recognize social differences in a more thoughtful and a more critical manner, and contribute to the development of empathy and compassion among children. So how can we then move towards transforming teacher cultural landscapes? First, let's examine more fully what constitutes multicultural self-development. Educators, again, such as James Banks, Nieto, and Bode, have consistently advocated moving beyond just a mere lifestyles or touristy approach if we want to truly understand the deeper perspectives and concerns of other cultural groups. There is a call for each of us to develop a more compassionate, a more humane, a more multicultural self that goes beyond a narrowly defined ideation of multicultural, but one that is truly capable of promoting greater good in society. Research also shows that as teachers, there are a few questions we should ask ourselves after reading multicultural literature. This kind of effective engagement, I believe, is very crucial because we need to be able to navigate these issues ourselves before we can even effectively introduce these kinds of discussions in the classroom. Questions like, who am I? Who do I wish to become? How do I become that person? With whom do I most closely identify with the story and why? Who are the silenced voices in these narratives? How do these realizations help me to become a better teacher, more effective in celebrating the diversity in my own classroom? So what should we do as teachers to transform our teaching cultural landscapes? First and foremost, you have to read more. Read because you want to, not because you have to. I know that the most common response to this is, but we don't have time. To which I reply by quoting Charles Buxton, an English philanthropist, a writer, and a member of the parliament. You will never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it. Second is to form reading tribes or to cultivate reading communities, organize book clubs, do book talks. The important thing is for students to see that reading can be a fun and enjoyable activity that they can actively be a part of and engage in. Research also shows that developing readers need more reading, not less, while gifted and talented readers should be given more challenge, greater exposure to more diverse reading materials, as they're also craving for more meaningful interactions with fellow book enthusiasts. And lastly, develop lifelong readers who feel empowered to serve their communities. This becomes even more relevant now in light of the national reading movement, which was just initiated by Singapore. This is a 5-year campaign by the National Library Board to read more, read widely, and read together. I believe that as educators, we need to serve as role models and to extend that conversation even further by letting our teachers recognize the interconnections between reading, feeling, and being of service to the community. So I'd like to end with a quote from Donalyn Miller, the book whisperer herself, who says this: "Without a question, I am a better teacher because I read. I pass books into my students' hands and talk with them about what they read. I model what a reading life looks like and show my students how reading enriches my life and can enrich theirs too." I do hope that through this short video, you're able to see the potentially transformative power of reading and how it is vital to social and emotional learning in a culturally responsive pedagogy. I am Myra Bacsal from the National Institute of Education, Singapore. Thank you for listening.